Hello, this is Jean Powbarabajagal, and I'm going to do a contest entry here for Robert of Robert's on My Turntable. He is pushing to get 1,000 subscribers, and his contest is to show artists that spell out the word thousand. I think you could also do grand if you don't have as many albums to pick from, but definitely CDs. I can do that pretty easily, and I thought that I'd kind of do some oddball selections for me, at least. We'll see what I've got pulled out here. Anyway, Robert's channel is great. I really appreciate that he likes to do kind of deep dives into recommending bands you should listen to, whole catalogs, and thoroughly goes through things, and really have enjoyed interacting with him too. So good luck, Robert. I'm sure you'll get them soon. Anyway, so for T, I'm a big Who fan, so I thought I'd pull out my Pete Townshend CDs that I have at this moment. I have a Benefit for Maryville Academy House of Blues in Chicago CD here. This one is one I really haven't listened to much, so I thought I'd just kind of show the whole catalog I have on CD by somebody if I'm picking them for the letter. So then there's White City, which I remember buying when it came out. It was a mid-'80s Pete Townshend album. Give Blood and Brilliant Blues and Face the Face were all singles that I listened to a lot. There was a whole long-form story video with this. I remember having that as well. Then prior to that, he had an album, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes? I can't remember anymore, but I'm missing that one. And I don't have Rough Mix here on CD either, but I have Empty Glass, which I think is maybe his best solo album. That's probably that one, or I really enjoyed Who Came First, his first one, where he's standing on eggs. This was, one of the first Who solo albums, along with John Entwistle's Smash Your Head Against the Wall and Roger Daltrey's Daltrey album. All three of those records I really like. But this one kind of has a lot of demos that later became Who's Next, and it was from some Maher Baba albums that he did along with Ronnie Lane and Billy Gibbons, right? Billy Gibbons. No, not Billy. Oh, what's his name? Oh, see, this is what happens when I'm just winging it. Oh, I'm not going to remember his name. Not Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top. But I'll remember at some point. Anyway, a guy who had done a lot of backing vocals with The Who and had his own solo career as well. He's an interesting artist, but I'm just spacing on his name right now. Anyway, but he was involved in the whole Maher Baba thing, so I know he's co-wrote a couple songs on here, and recently I've been getting into learning about guitars, and the song on here, Sheridan Gibson, that goes, I'm sitting in the Sheridan Gibson playing my Gibson. I always knew of the Hotels Sheridan, so I knew that Sheridan Gibson was a hotel thing. I didn't realize there's a Gibson guitar called a Sheridan, so that, and it's all about, I think, hanging out with the James Gang and at a barbecue or something, when the Who were on tour and the James Gang were opening. So I have a feeling that he and Joe Walsh either were talking guitars, and so he wrote a guitar-related song. But I love that album. I love Empty Glass too. So there's T. Next, I decided for H, I'm going to show my John Lee Hooker collection. I have a lot of John Lee Hooker albums. I know some of them better than others. He's one of those artists, and you'll see another artist on my list here like him, that if I see any of his albums I don't have, I just pick them up. And, you know, over time I'll become more and more familiar with them. But John Lee Hooker's catalog was pretty extensive. If you go back to his early records, he did a lot of label hopping, like a lot of the, you know, Chicago and Detroit era electric blues men. You know, if you could get some, you usually were getting paid on the spot for recording, so he did a lot of playing under aliases to different labels to, you know, make money. And the label he's most associated with, though, in the early days was Vee-Jay, which of course also put out some of the Beatles' first recordings in the United States along with Swan. But this is a Vee-Jay collection that has, you know, a lot of the real classic songs like Dimples and Boom Boom and, oh, yeah, this is how many, it's here, 40 tracks on this double CD comp. Whiskey and Women, that was a big one. So, you know, one of those people who just the British blues boom was totally in love with. And I'm a big J. Geils fan, and he's also pretty much Peter Wolf's idol. He quotes John Lee Hooker all the time and tells stories about his friendship with him and all that. I was lucky enough to, and of course Van Morrison was hugely influenced by John Lee Hooker and did an album with him and helped him with his comeback album too, I believe. This is another that's 4 classic albums, so this is a reissue of like 4 of the Vee-Jay era albums from the late 50s, early 60s. This one is kind of an unreleased album, more folk blues. So I think that was an album that got recorded for Chess, which wasn't his normal label. This one here, Serves You Right to Suffer, that's a really good one. That's, you know, 1966. I like that one a lot. Then I've got the Hooker and Heat with Canned Heat, a double album on CD. And then this one, I think this one, is this one with like, I wanted to say Mike Bloomfield's on it or something. I remember this being good, but and it's more of a 70s type album. 72. I'd have to re-listen to that one to remember what's going on with it. Here's another best of. This is a later best of, so 65 to 74. So definitely more the time where he's getting picked up by, you know, the early 70s bands like Canned Heat and everybody. This one is The Healer. That I remember coming out, and I remember buying this album. And part of the reason I was buying it was because through The Who, he was on the Iron Man record that The Who did. And this was right around that time as well. So it has a lot of people like George Thorogood, Charlie Musselwhite, Canned Heat, Robert Cray, Bonnie Raitt, Carlos Santana. So it's one of those, you know, collaboration with their influencer albums. And let's see what else we got. This one, Mr. Lucky. That's another, I think, 1990s release. Has Albert Collins, Ry Cooder, Robert Cray, Booker T, Van Morrison, Keith Richards, Carlos Santana, Johnny Winter. You know, another one of those where people who he influenced are trying to get him more support. And then I think this was his very last album, Don't Look Back. So I saw him right at the end. I think I saw him in either 1996 or 1997 in Seattle at Bumbershoot. And he basically was kind of led out there and did his whole set sitting down. But I think he was, what, like 96 years old or something. So I was just really glad to see him. And it was a good show. He just pretty much, you know, was just playing the songs, though. So, okay, John Lee Hooker. Then, for O, I picked Yoko Ono, because I have a decent amount of Yoko Ono albums here. I don't have the one that I actually know the best, though. The Yoko Ono album I know the best and really like is Season of Glass. I bought that when it came out, and I played it a lot. It's a really good album. Definitely one of her more pop albums, but of course it was right after John's assassination, so pretty wrenching album too. I don't have the Yoko Ono Plastic Ono Band album. I've never had that one. I'd like to get it. I do have Approximately Infinite Universe, which is really great. And I have Feeling the Space, which I want to talk about somebody who plays on Feeling the Space in a minute. I don't know that much about him, but I wanted to bring that up. Then there's this Yes, I'm a Witch. This is kind of, she's done some sort of, you know, kind of club type mixes in recent years, and a lot of sort of experimental music. I think this is one of the ones with Sonic Youth. This one's called... yeah, Kim Gordon's on here, Thurston Moore. They were really influenced by her. And of course, they're really experimental when they want to be. So this one's called Yoko, Kim, Thurston. I like Sonic Youth. I haven't kept up with all their music. They've got a lot, but that would be... They're somebody who I'd pick up anything I saw if I had a chance. This is Take Me to the Land of Hell. So this is another newer one. I don't have Rising right now. I used to play Rising as well. And this is Between My Head and the Sky. I think this might be one of her more recent ones. I think there's maybe one after that. That's a pretty cool picture of her and her band. So yeah, I totally respect her. I've always found her really interesting. And I have more Yoko Ono albums than a lot of people. Okay, this one is for Robert, because Robert has done a band that you should listen to segment on them. And this is the only album I have by him. But I'd get some more, especially kind of picking and choosing from Robert's suggestions. So here's my one Uriah Heep album, Demons and Wizards. I got this a couple years ago when I was trying to get more kind of heavy metal and hard rock stuff that I really hadn't ever listened to before, and I enjoy it. I just don't know it well. So there, that's the Uriah Heep album. Okay, I was talking about that Yoko Ono's Feeling the Space album. She has a flautist on that album who's a kind of a free jazz, fusion jazz player named Jeremy Steig. And I have two Jeremy Steig solo albums, Firefly and Wayfaring Stranger. Both of those I really haven't listened to much, but I was listening to this album for a while, Jeremy and the Satyrs. And this is really interesting. This is like a psychedelic rock jazz album from the late 60s. Apparently, this is again when I was going through my J. Geils phase. This is an album that Peter Wolf used to go around and play for everybody. He loves this album. This is kind of a cult classic thing, and it's really good psychedelic rock. It's really interesting. So it's very garagey, but jazzy, you know, long form, spacey. Really a cool album. And I believe Jeremy Stig passed away. He lived in Japan for a while. That's all I really know about him. Okay, then for A, now that we've gone, that all the S-A, so yep. So, you know, I grew up in the 80s, and when the 90s came along with grunge, I kind of was going through a phase where I wasn't that interested in it, but I also had some friends who were very into it. And so I really like Nirvana. I really like a couple bands, but along with Nirvana, my favorite grunge band is actually a band from Cincinnati, Ohio, who kind of got associated with the Seattle Sub Pop label, came out here and lived out here in the Seattle area, but really they're based in Ohio, and that would be the Afghan Wigs. This is their first album, Up in It. Actually, it's not their first album. Their first album is called Big Top Halloween, and it's really rare, and it's never come out on CD that I know of. I don't have that. I've never had that, but I'd love to find it. So Up in It was their first Sub Pop album. Then their second Sub Pop album was Congregation. I love this album. I played this to death. This album, to me, is kind of a quantum leap above this one. And it ties in with their breakthrough album, which was called Gentleman. They're both kind of rock opera-ish, maybe. Definitely kind of dysfunctional relationship sagas, and, you know, of course, the typical drugs and alcohol stuff going on and all that. But I found them a really interesting kind of charismatic band. They could really rock, and I would pretty much go there and yell along to the lyrics and leap up and down and blow my voice out and my ears out all the time. This is their EP, Uptown Avondale, and it's kind of grungy covers of a lot of soul songs, like Dark End of, what's on here, Band of Gold, Come See About Me, True Love Travels on a Gravel Road, and then they have a song called Miles is Dead, but this is a remix of it on here called Rebirth of the Cool, which is just kind of a big long dub version of that song. The thing I like about Afghan Wigs is obviously they're from a record collector rock sort of fan background, so there were lots of covers where they do Patti Smith covers, or they do, you know, lots of R&B type covers, or Prince. He loved Prince. They did a tour where they were opening for Aerosmith at one point. I mean, there would always be kind of, they'd be going along, and then suddenly the song would start having references to She Loves You, or all kinds of things going on. So lots of rock and roll. I had a lot of fun being a big Afghan Wigs fan. This is their album, Black Love. That came afterwards. That's a really good album. I think that's one of Greg Dooley's favorite albums. This is a bootleg I have. Debonair Gentleman. Another version of Uptown Avondale. You can tell I really collected them. Kind of oddball stuff here. Here's their album, 1965. That's a good album. Here's a single from 1965, 66. Here's a kind of promo collection called Hysterectomy. It's spelled like history. Then they had, let's see, this was, you know, promo EP thing, promo single with dates on it. Again, see, I like that because that's referencing the Stax label. They did a lot. I had a t-shirt that was, it looked like an Earth, Wind, and Fire t-shirt, but it was an Afghan Wigs shirt. And Turn on the Water, that's from Gentleman, or what is it from? No, it's from Congregation. So yeah, lots of EPs. These are two of their newer albums, Due to the Beast and In Spades. And I saw them a lot, but I saw them on the In Spades tour a couple years ago. So they were still really powerful live. Greg Dooley has had solo projects, and he had a band called the Twilight Singers, and I would go see them as well. But now the Afghan Wigs are back as far as his main focus. Okay, what else do I have? So that was A, and then N. So N, I pulled Willie Nelson. This is, again, kind of somebody who, like John Lee Hooker, I just pick up anything I see by him, and I don't really feel confident saying I know his albums that well. There's some I've played more than others, so, you know, I know Red-Headed Stranger and Shotgun Willie and some like that. Some of the early ones stick with me a bit more. So here's Shotgun Willie. That's a really good album there. That's from 1973. And Yesterday's Wine. I remember playing that one. That's pretty good. Red-Headed Stranger and To Lefty from Willie. So that's a Lefty Frizzell tribute along with Red-Headed Stranger. See, this is the thing. If I find them on this reissue Columbia label, I always pick it up because, you know, remastered reissues. So that one is The Troublemaker. And this one is Stardust, a big, huge album where it's more his standards. I mean, more standards that was obviously Georgia on My Mind and all that. This is a Ray Price and Willie Nelson album, San Antonio Rose. I like Ray Price. This is a Waylon Jennings and Willie album, Take It to the Limit. So, of course, it has the Eagles song on it. This one is called Just One Love. So I think that's in the 2000s. No, let's see. Oh, tiny little print. Looks more like 1995 or something. And this one's Teatro. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So again, this is a more recent one. Hey, I'm going to get new glasses pretty soon. That might help. Can't tell you when that's from because I can't read it. And Milk Cow Blues is the other I have. So yeah, you know, this has Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and this is one of those that has lots of people contributing. Johnny Lang. And I can't quite read it. Oh, Dr. John. Susan Tedeschi. Yeah, more Dr. John, more Johnny Lang. B.B. King. Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Okay, so that's those. And finally, we're to the last letter. D for 1,000. Well, I picked another artist that I have a whole bunch of albums by, and I kind of know, and I pick up his albums whenever I see him. But Dion. I wanted to show a bunch of my Dion records. So here's like a really cool Lori label compilation. 2 CDs. You know, has your Runaround Sue and The Wanderer, Lovers Who Wander, you know, so these are the real classic radio hits so I had this professor. I took a 60s history class, like one of my first years in community college. And, you know, he was an ex-hippie, but he really wanted to talk about rock and roll. So that's thrilling because I'm all into that. And I wanted to get some of the background that I knew and didn't know. But he had this term for music that's pre-1964 and after, you know, Elvis goes in the army and all that business. And he would call those 6 years or so the vomit rock era. And I've come to realize that I like a lot of stuff from the vomit rock era. Sure, there's, you know, Fabian and whatever, Paul Anka, but there's so much Motown, there's so much R&B, there's Dion. I mean, Dion's pretty great. You know, he's like one of the people who continued to be a rock and roller. So, and he, of course, you know, also kind of went through a folk period, and he has a blues side to him. So, you know, I think people like Bruce Springsteen and all those people were hugely influenced by him. This is one called Bronx Blues, the Columbia recordings, 1962 to 1965. So again, that's kind of after his Laurie period, but he's trying to do more blues-related stuff. And Kickin' Child, that's kind of, you know, now we're into sort of the folk era where it's coming up not quite to Abraham, Martin, and John, but, you know, sort of kind of like the Everly Brothers. With the Everly Brothers, I get all the 60s stuff too, you know, the 50s stuff and the 60s stuff, and, you know, even into the 70s stuff a bit. This one is another retrospective, The Road I'm On. You know, it's pretty amazing, all this stuff. So here's a double. I mean, that's the thing about CDs, is people can knock CDs, but you can get so many of these reissues that were just kind of lost singles or tapes that had never come out. And while some of it now is getting on vinyl, you know, I doubt like all this Dion stuff is going to get on vinyl. So here's one of his 1989 album. And of course, this has some more current people on it. Like there's Patti Smythe doing background vocals, mixed by Dave Edmunds. Dave Edmunds and Bryan Adams and Lou Reed and Katie Lang and Paul Simon are all on it. So definitely another one of those people who idolized him are trying to get him to be well known again. Deja Vu. This one is another, this has like him doing Bruce Springsteen songs and then his own songs. I think this is from 2000. And Son of Skip James. So this is him definitely doing acoustic blues. Shows his Martin guitar there. And it says File Under Blues on it, 2007. That's when that's from. Okay, Robert. Hope you enjoyed that, and good luck getting to 1,000. And I'm off to do another contest entry. Take care. Have a good day.